Hi, this is TJR,
And this is Robert Kinsler.
and today we are going to discuss the motion picture A Hard Day's Night, starring the Beatles, the
Okay.
first Beatles movie, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
And let me ask you, how long has it been since you, of course, let me back up here. We both decided we'll rewatch the film first, and then we'll discuss it. You
Right.
watched it last night.
Right.
I watched it this morning. Prior to last night, how long has it been since you've seen it?
I'm guessing maybe 5 years ago or so, maybe 5 or 6 years. I'm trying to recall. My wife actually had never seen it.
Oh.
Or I think she had seen parts of it, if I'm not mistaken. So when I got the DVD here, I had to, of course, watch it, and then she watched it with me, and she just loved it. Of course, I knew I would love it.
She'd never seen it before.
She'd never seen it before, as far as I recall.
We should have gotten her. We should have gotten her on the show to give her kind of the first
she'll
time
never go on
impression.
camera. She has no interest in going on camera. But,
Okay.
But yeah, and then when we watched it last night, she was laughing along and enjoying, and of course, who can't help but love the songs,
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's just a great movie. I mean, it packs quite a punch at 90 minutes.
Yeah. Would you say that you have watched this film? Like every couple of years, you'll rewatch this movie.
I would. Well, I'd seen it maybe. I would say about maybe every 5 to 6 years I'll rewatch it.
Okay.
Now,
as for myself, prior to this watching, it has been ages. I would say probably decades since I've seen it in its entirety. I think the last time I watched it in its entirety was as a youth on television.
Okay, wow.
Broadcast on TV. I've seen bits of the movie here and there since then, but watching it all the way through, it has been decades.
Right. Well, so that's interesting to see what your impressions are.
Yeah. I will say one thing. It was a lot funnier this time. I thought it was funny the first time, but it was a lot funnier this time. There were things that struck me that I didn't catch before. In fact, there was one sequence, and I don't know, I'm curious how many people notice this, where it's very early on, John Lennon is holding what looks like a Coke bottle. And he was holding a Coke bottle, and he's putting it up to his nose, and he's going like this. It's very early on in the train sequence. And I watched that, I thought, wait a minute, did he just do a Coke joke?
Yeah. I think there's all kinds of crazy gags in there. Every time I have watched the film, though, like this time, and maybe because I do have a better television system and better, but I had never noticed that there's a scene where you see John Lennon's 1964 book, In His Own Right, had come out earlier that year, and you see it on a shelf behind them.
Oh, okay.
Now, before, probably when I saw it on a smaller television, even if it was, let's say, a 27-inch screen, I just didn't see that.
Yeah.
Now that I have, I think, a 50-inch television and much better resolution, it popped out at me right away. So it was really neat. Not only did the movie sound better on my system, but it sure looked a heck of a lot better. And I don't even have the Blu-ray like you do.
Yeah, no, you've got, what edition do you have here?
Yeah, I have this, and I'm trying to remember, I want to say this came out about 10 years ago, this collector's edition. And this is a 2-disc, but it's just DVD.
Yeah.
And as I recall, it was, obviously remastered. It was I think they did a new transfer. They scanned the film because it was originally shot on film, not video.
Yeah.
And I think they did some, and it looks and sounds great on my system.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine watching a Blu-ray what that must look like.
I'm holding up the Criterion release, which this particular version was dual format. It had both Blu-ray and DVD, a 2-disc DVD and a 1-disc Blu-ray, just duplicating all the same features and everything, and then a book, of course, as well.
And a neat picture of them there on the back too, which is very cool. Yeah.
But I've got the Criterion release here that I picked up to be able to start experiencing this film again. I'm looking forward to looking at the bonus features, which I've only kind of just done a cursory glance of. So I'm kind of really coming into this almost kind of new in some respects, that it's been so long since I've seen it.
Yeah.
Before we get too much into our own opinions, let's talk maybe a little bit of history.
About the history, yeah. Now this movie, A Hard Day's Night, was directed by Richard Lester, and this movie basically was shot and came out at the height of Beatlemania. Beatlemania, I think, may have started a year or so before that in Europe, but by the time this movie came out, the Beatles were huge in Australia, Europe, obviously here in the U.S. after the Ed Sullivan appearances. So this film, I think I read, it may have been on Wikipedia or something, it would basically cost about $500,000 or so to make, and made millions of dollars. It was shot in black and white. It was filmed over a relatively short period of time. And as I recall, too, which is kind of interesting, it was shot kind of in chronological order, as I recall.
Really?
I don't know if you recall that, but I think I read that somewhere. But you know, what I like about the movie and the plot line, because we don't want to give away too much in case people have, not everyone has necessarily seen the movie.
Okay.
And I would recommend that they do that. But, you know, basically, the Beatles at this point, they were kind of a prisoner already of Beatlemania. You know, you see them run from a train to a car to maybe a recording session to a press conference, and they have to go back to a hotel room. And so it's kind of about, like, here the Beatles are, you know, they're living the dream, you know, these, you know, burgeoning young rock stars, but they're kind of imprisoned by it. But the movie, through the music and through kind of the zany storyline, you know, it's just really fun the way that that's kind of explored and you know, just everything kind of manifests its way in this perfect, exhilarating ride where you're kind of taken along with the Beatles, and the whole movie is set over like maybe the course of a day and a half or a couple days, and it's just great.
Now, if memory serves me, which it may not, the film came out around '64.
Yeah, it did come
which
out
would,
in
yeah,
64.
we'd just be in the, you know, from their release of their first album, 1962, if I'm not mistaken, roughly around there. It's only been a few short years now, and I kind of get the feeling that the movie studio, everybody involved, was thinking, "Hey, who knows how long this Beatles fad is going to last? Let's get a movie in theaters now, while the fad is here, while it's popular." You know, no one can really know how far things are going to go, and I don't think anybody, even the Beatles themselves, could have any idea how far their legacy was going to stretch. But it is a funny movie. It is a very lighthearted film. But you're right. It does show them being prisoners of their own fame throughout the entire film. This is, though, very much what you refer to when we talked about the film Let It Be. You refer to the Beatles in that film Let It Be as being an unbranded Beatles. In this film, this is the branded Beatles.
Definitely so.
Yeah. This is the Brian Epstein branded Beatles. And this is a very idealized version of the Beatles.
It is, yeah. And yet, one of those weird things, and I had read that, but I went back and looked at, you never hear the word Beatles spoken in the movie. You do see it on a helicopter. There's a scene where they're shooting, you know, like the show within the movie kind of thing, where you see the Beatles on the wall.
Yeah.
You know,
you see it on Ringo's drum kit.
Yeah, but you never, and you see it on the drum kit, but you never hear the word Beatles, like, you know,
ever.
You know,
no one mentions the Beatles. No one says the Beatles.
And there's all these cool things like that. You go, you know, the movie was so far ahead of its time. Plus, how inventive the music videos are within the movie is just spectacular. Some are kind of crazy with. It looks like they're playing with the speed of the frame ratio and stuff. But you know. Some fit neatly into the kind of crazy story we alluded to. Some kind of exist outside of the story, but it's just it's a magical film, I think, and probably did a lot to build their legacy, I think, as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure everything seemed very innovative at the time. When I had seen the film as a youth, I had already seen many episodes of the Monkees TV show.
Okay, which it influenced, right?
Which it very heavily influenced. Right. In fact, it's basically the blueprint for the Monkees TV show.
Yes, that's well said.
You could almost call it the pilot for the Monkees TV series.
I've never heard it stated like that, but that is so true.
Well, just like the movie Forbidden Planet, the classic 50s science fiction movie.
Is a blueprint for Star Trek.
Is a blueprint for Star Trek.
Exactly.
Yes, in many respects.
Yeah.
And you could definitely say that. So when I watched A Hard Day's Night, I had seen this already in the Monkees TV show, but I was already wise enough to realize, well, this came before the Monkees TV show, but I'd already kind of seen this kind of style done. But yes, it was innovated there with that film. In that respect, this film is very ahead of its time. In that respect, this film is doing a lot of unique and interesting things. The film is, in some respects, very experimental. You keep talking about, you don't want to give away the plot. Now, here is where I guess maybe I come off a bit more negative about the film. I don't think there's that much plot going on.
Oh, there's not that much,
no, I don't think there's too much plot going on.
No, what I'm saying is I think there's a lot of cool things we could talk about, but I think it's neat if people can discover those watching the film
Let's
themselves.
not give away the funny bits.
Like I will say this, and maybe in the comments section, hopefully people, before you read all the comments, that will probably undoubtedly come below this episode, make sure you see the film. And like you said, it's available on DVD, Blu-ray, and probably digitally too as well. but there's two Beatles I think that really stand out in it, and maybe when we respond to the comments or talk off camera, we can see if we agree.
Sure.
But I think two of the Beatles surprisingly come off with the strongest personalities in the film. That and I don't think any of them probably had much classical theater training, obviously.
Yeah, no.
Just a lot of time on stage and stuff. But it's just a great film. I think all the Beatles and the great actors that they have playing the roles are great. And just so people know, there is a manager in the film, but Brian Epstein does not portray him, but he does have an uncredited appearance. And Phil Collins is actually one of the young fans.
Yes, in the audience.
In the audience, yeah.
Yes.
So there's all these kind of great layers to this movie that you could, that for everybody to discover.
I was not aware of Brian Epstein's uncredited appearance in the film.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know. You have to tell me off camera later what his appearance was. But yeah, there's a manager named. And actually, you don't even hear his name, I don't think, much in the film.
Yeah.
But I had to look at the credits. His name is Norm.
That's right.
He's the manager. Of course, he's not their manager in real life, just
and
an
he's
actor.
great. I forgot his name offhand, but he's just terrific.
And there's another actor playing Paul McCartney's grandfather.
Right.
And everybody in the film, when when Paul first introduced him as his grandfather, everybody says, "That's not your grandfather. I've seen him before."
Yeah.
In other words, in real life, that's not your grandfather.
Yeah,
he says, "Well, he's my other grandfather."
Yeah, it's great.
And I'm giving away lines, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I said we shouldn't do.
And it is amazing when you think that this movie, I think it basically is just at 90 minutes, how much, it still has time to, what are there, a dozen songs that you hear all of or part of in there? I mean, you even hear some songs that were earlier before A Hard Day's Night, album, like you hear Don't Bother Me, part of George Harrison's first song that he wrote.
Yeah.
And you hear some other tracks that were from earlier, but it's just great the way they weave the music, even some of the instrumental versions of some of their songs that you hear kind of in the background of action sequences. It's just magical how all that plays out.
Well, the songs were a lot shorter. The generally speaking songs were 2.5 to 3 minutes at that time. That's another discussion, but that's a length I'd like to see more music artists try to achieve, that under 3 minutes or just no more than 3.5 minute length. I think we can write stronger songs if we go to that, but that's another discussion. I don't want to get sidetracked here, which I sometimes am prone to do.
Yeah.
At any rate, though, let's talk about just you seem pretty. You're grinning from ear to ear as you talk about this movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, you really love this film.
Oh, I do, and it just makes me feel good. When I watch this movie, there's just that sense of fun. This is before all the bad things that kind of happened to the Beatles. All the whether it's their manager committing suicide, or the well publicized where a member would leave and one of the other members or two members would get them back in. And I don't know the exact sequence, but I've heard like I think Ringo Starr wrote Octopus's Garden when he left the band.
Yeah.
I know that there's some, and I what I try to do is try to dwell on the positive. Especially as it relates to this movie, that there is that sense of joy in not only the music, but they just look like they're having a blast.
Yeah.
And the fans are obviously going crazy, and you see John on stage kind of doing these weird things that I've also seen him do in some of the concert films, just to get a rise out of the audience. So it's like he's just having fun with it.
Yeah. And I've read plenty of interviews with people like George Martin or the people associated with the Beatles. And during those early days, they were known for that kind of quippy sense of humor when they would talk to the press. That's all unscripted. This film was scripted. It feels like it's all ad-lib.
It was scripted, but the screenwriter, and hopefully I'm going to pronounce his name right, it's spelled A-L-U-N, Owen. So I believe it's Alan Owen, but if I mispronounce it, I apologize. He apparently traveled with the band and spent several days, and he had also written a script, or maybe it was a play, that kind of tapped into the dialect and kind of the wordplay of people from Liverpool. So I think the Beatles were really happy with what he brought to the script. So they seem to be enjoying. It seems very natural, the dialogue and how it's delivered and how it reflects their four distinct personalities. And they do already. While this is very early in their career, they have very definitive personalities that while there's a synergy when they're together, they also come off like you're not going to confuse like, oh, is that a George Ring? I mean, they all come through immediately, and it's amazing, having been a music writer for so many years, how many bands today you kind of cover, and maybe there's one strong personality in a band, or maybe two, but the other people just disappear into the woodwork. But the Beatles maybe kind of set the template. They are a band, where maybe Lennon and McCartney were doing the majority of the songwriting, but their personalities were all important to the formula and to that magical thing that made the Beatles the Fab Four, you know.
Yeah, and there are, of course, we'll get into this in a moment. There are those moments where it leaves reality, and we'll get into that in a moment. But in the interviews I've read, like I said, with people like George Martin and other people associated with him, their kind of quippy sense of humor was a real thing. You know, there's that early story with George Martin where he first meets them, and I forget what it was. Something about he says, well, you know, is there anything I can do for you? And George Harrison's, well, you can stop by getting rid of that tie. You know, and just that kind of quippy sense of humor that's just like off the wall. We barely know each other, and you're making a joke about my tie. That type of thing was very real. Also, the idea that during those early days, because they had already been, we think of the Beatles as starting in '62 with their first album. We don't realize that they were together during the late '50s, the years of touring Hamburg, Germany, and where they became, you know, as thick as thieves. You know, they were, you know, in the interviews you hear with them about those time period where they were just like, they were just buds. They were bros. They were like, you know, Ringo says, you know, I joined them and I felt like I had 3 new brothers. You know, and they were very tight, and you can sense that when you watch this film. You definitely can feel that. It's real, it's sincere, and it's genuine.
Yeah, it is, and that's what I mean. I mean, even though it's a fictional depiction of the Beatles, like you said, it's trying to you know, personify the brand that either the record company or their manager were trying to reinforce on the public. But whatever it was, it comes off as very authentic and very real. And I think that's why you're able to immediately immerse yourself in what's going on, even though, like you said, it's not reality. And you know, it was, the movie was made many years ago, more than 50 years ago, but it really holds up well, I think.
The movie leaves reality on numerous occasions. I keep, as I was watching this, I would refer to it as, in this film they have what I call their Beatle powers, where they can be on the train talking to someone, and then suddenly they're not on the train, they're outside the window talking to that same person.
That's right.
And one moment John is in a bathtub, and then a second later, he's out of the bathtub with his bathrobe on. You know,
it's funny.
And they also have this amazing ability to be able to play electric instruments in a cargo section of a train with no sound equipment, and yet we can hear it all.
Yeah, we can hear it all.
Perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah. Boy, didn't that set the stage for MTV? And matter of fact, I think Richard Lester, I think he may have said it about himself once, and the director, he said he's considered kind of the father of MTV because he really set the template for how to do music videos. This film, there were music videos before that, but not like this, not like what you see here. Like I said, you get a gamut, like what you're saying. You see them, you know, sitting around, maybe in the cargo section of a train, or maybe they're out in the field just going crazy without instrument. And everything kind of works. It's like their personalities are so powerful, and the music is so powerful and potent that everything kind of comes together, you know. And it's just such a great movie. And every time I watch it, and I think we both alluded to that, you rediscover something, and of course you get to enjoy the music again.
I think I'm going to need to start watching it more often. Like I said, it has been decades since I've seen it. And part of the reason it's been a long time is, and this is going to shock some people, I've never considered it my favorite Beatles movie. I will talk about my favorite Beatles movie when we get to it.
Okay, that's fair.
I will say which one is my favorite.
That's fair, and I'm not going to quiz you. I know it's not this one, but we will get to it at some point.
I have always liked the movie, but it's gotten this reputation, and not reputation. If you read about it, you'll say it's on critics' lists of considered one of the 100 best films ever made.
Yeah, I know. I think a well-known critic at Time magazine, and I'm not going to try to say his name here, but I believe about 10 years ago he ranked it as one of the 100 great. It was in the top 100 greatest films of all time.
As much as I love the Beatles, as much as I, you know, feel their music is some of the most important music of the 20th century, I've never thought the film was like a masterpiece. I thought it was a fun and enjoyable movie, a fun romp, a kind of an idealized snapshot of time, of a time period. But I've never thought it was this great movie because it doesn't have much of a story to it. It's just and to a certain extent, without giving too much away, I feel like it's kind of a day in the life. Although kind of a zany day in the life.
Zany is a good word.
Yeah.
Buoyant, joyous. I mean, all these words come to mind, just like a lot of fun. Even though, like, there's times that the Beatles seem like they might not be happy with their situation, but they're having fun with it.
They're making the best of it.
They're making the best of it. Good lads,
I do now, looking back in retrospect, have to wonder that maybe decades ago when I first saw it, I didn't understand how, from a technical aspect, it was ahead of its time. Maybe that didn't really hit me at that age.
Yeah.
Talking about it now, having just watched it, maybe I will need to watch it on a more regular basis, like every couple of years, like you're saying, to really fully appreciate it.
Right, right.
And I understand that there is so much going on in the background of that film that there are little things you don't notice the first time or the second time or even the third time.
Exactly.
And I was even reading that in the essay book in Close with this, my version here. It talks about that, that there are things that people notice only like on the 10th, 20th viewing.
I think that's fair because, like I said, every time I've seen it, I think, although I watched it last night, if I watched it again today, I'm sure I'd see a couple things I didn't catch last night. Because, there, again, sometimes with me, you're looking at the whole, sometimes you might be tuning into the music or you're going, some of the accents are very thick. Some of the jokes you're going, okay, is that, there's even some words I still am not 100% sure what they mean. I think they're words that they use in Great Britain and stuff. Slang. Slang. So I mean, there's always something more to get out of it. But I think we probably both, follow that good advice to see it more frequently because I think you can never watch a Beatles flick too many times when it's as good as this one.
Depending on, okay, depending on which one.
When I said as good as this one.
We'll get into that later when we talk about some of the other films.
Okay, sounds fair enough, Sure.
So, any particular favorite song from the film? Not the catalog in general, but just the film. Any particular favorite song?
Boy, that's a tough one, but I think I'm going to say I Should Have Known Better, I think. I just love John's vocal on that. I know John was not a huge fan of his own voice for some crazy reason, but boy, I sure love his voice, and I love that vocal performance.
Okay.
I mean, I love all the songs, but that one stands out.
Then let's hear your number 2.
Oh boy, don't do that to me.
Okay, I won't.
Okay, don't do it. Not today anyway. Maybe another time.
If I had to pick a favorite, it would be, I mean, I do like them all, but And I Love Her.
Great song.
I actually did a whole video just analyzing that one song. I think it's a very deceptive piece of simplicity, that song.
No, great song.
And and if I was going to pick a number 2, I Want to Be Your Man.
Yeah.
I like that one because it's just a real kind of rocker,
isn't it? Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
It's a real rocker. It's no wonder the Stones covered it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I still like the way Ringo sings it better than with the Stones version. I just love Ringo's version, and I still, even when he performs it today, I saw him do it, I think just a few years ago, and he still brings it to that song. Just kills it. So, just a great movie, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it.
Any closing comments you want to make?
The only thing we didn't cover, I think, is the movie was shot in black and white.
Yeah.
And part of why I think that's even more important now than then. It may have been a cost savings measure back in '64.
Yeah.
But I think now it almost serves to further the time machine. Back to that time, and because so many of the great pictures you see of the Beatles at that time
are
in black and white, and it kind of is almost like maybe a visual extension of kind of the identity of the early Beatles, but it's just filmed beautifully in the English locations. I know some were done in a studio, some were done out in the countryside and stuff. It just the whole thing. Richard Lester just did a great job on the film.
You're giving me a lot more to think about as to my appreciation of the film. I was coming into this thinking it's definitely not one of the 100 greatest films of all time. I'm not sure I can still really say that, in my opinion. I think it's a fun and enjoyable romp, a fun and enjoyable movie. But you've given me a lot more to think about today.
Okay, good.
As far as how I'm going to appreciate it in the future. And I'm definitely going to be thinking about this when I give it a second look.
Yeah, and the cool thing is if we get some comments, it'd be great if you've never seen the film previously, maybe put that down, because I'm curious what you think. I mean, I saw it much closer to the time of its... I mean, it was much closer to the time of its creation than it's been since.
Yeah.
I saw it, I think, in high school when I was in high school the first time. So it's been a few years. But if you're just seeing it for the first time, would love to know your comments. I want to hear... we both want to hear what you have to say anyway. And
of course, if you've of course maybe watched the film numerous times, no matter how many times you've seen it, please let us know what you think.
Definitely.
Share with us your thoughts. Any particular favorite songs off the film? Any particular observations that maybe we didn't bring up that you'd like to bring up? Please mention them. Join the conversation. And this was fun. We are going to come back and do the next Beatles film at a later time. We're going to talk about Help.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll probably need some help with that one.
Sure.
Oh,
yeah, okay.
that was pretty bad. I'm definitely not ready for prime time.
Okay.
So,
anyways, see y'all later, everybody.
See ya, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. This is TJR. Thank you so much for watching. Since this is a Beatles-related video, I wanted to take this moment to just address everybody who's asked me, when is part 2 of my in-depth analysis of Sgt. Pepper going to come out? It's going to come out later this week. Keep your fingers crossed. Just putting the finishing touches on it. Thank you for being so patient. So stay tuned for that. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And if you are subscribed, don't forget to sign up for notifications so you can know when videos come out. Thank you all for watching. Bye.